Hi, I am Dr. Ko from New Hair Transplant. Today, I'm going to introduce you about several conditions to achieve good hair transplant results. There are 3 conditions that needs to be met, and they are as follows. First one, the engraftment rate. As much of the transplanted hair survives to achieve the intended result. Second is the density. A densely packed graft that looks fuller. Third, optimized placement. Properly distributing the hair so that the same amount of hair gives the best possible appearance. Okay, so we're going to talk about engraftment rate. Hair transplant can produce the best result when we transplant 10 grafts and all 10 grafts comes out. We often refer to this concept as engraftment or survival rate, which is a percentage of the number of hairs actually grown over the number of hairs transplanted at the same time of surgery. If the engraftment rate is 100%, all of the grafts are grown. And if the engraftment rate is about 50%, only half of the grafts are grown. Not only the surgical technique, but also the system in the operating room plays a very important role in grafting. No matter how good the surgery is, if there is a problem with the environment, it will result in a lower engraftment rate. For example, no matter how well the grafts are transplanted, if the follicles were dried out during storage, the temperature of the follicle was high, or there was damage during removal process, the engraftment rate will decrease. Now let's talk about the hair transplantation system to maximize this engraftment rate one by one. First, using high magnification digital microscope and high magnification loupe. Hair transplant is a surgery that deals with very thin, tiny hair follicles and the hairs that attach to them. The micrometer unit used to describe the thickness of a hair is equivalent to 0.0001 centimeters when converted to the centimeters we are used to. When dealing with such small tissues, it's obvious that it is much better to operate under high magnification than with the naked eye. Hair transplant can be categorized as microsurgery, a subspecialty of plastic surgery. Since hair follicles need to be manipulated with precision to achieve good results, using equipment with good magnification is a key factor in achieving good results. Many experiments and papers have already shown that there is an improvement of more than 20%. That's very high when using a microscope. The red coloring indicates that 20% or more hair can be acquired when using a binocular microscope. Second, low temperature moisture retention device. You may not be familiar with this device. Let me explain what this device is. Since hair follicles begin to dry out as soon as they are removed from the body, they are placed in a storage solution to prevent them from drying out. Depending on the experiments and papers published, exposure to air as little as 30 seconds or as long as 3 minutes can kill the follicles. This is why it's important for healthcare providers to pay attention to the moisture status of hair follicles, as they can be affected by even very short periods of air exposure. In number of experiments and papers, we already know that 40% reduction in primary follicle engraftment and 18% reduction in secondary follicles if we expose air for about 60 minutes. Also, the cold temperature is one of the key issues. Keeping the follicle at a cold temperature of 4 to 8 degrees Celsius is just as important as maintaining hydration. This has the advantage of lowering the metabolism of the cells, allowing them to live longer without oxygen and nutrients, and reducing cell damage from oxygen toxicity. Now, this table above summarizes hair graft engraftment rate in relation to temperature and shows that the engraftment rate did not decrease when stored at 4 degrees Celsius for extended periods of time. Dr. Biner also presented at the International Society for Hair Transplantation in 2007 and showed that the grafting rate of cold stored follicle was significantly better. This is why doctors should always pay attention to the moisture and temperature of the hair follicles, because no matter how well the surgeon performs the surgery, if the system for storing the hair follicle is not good, the result will be poor. In hair transplant, there is a process of dehydration and temperature increase due to exposure to air during the process of separating the hair follicles and transplantation. Although many good hospitals have been making efforts to reduce this, we thought it would be good to create a method that eliminates the time from harvesting a transplantation and continually maintain a low temperature. So we developed and applied 4 types of lower temperature moisture maintenance equipment that can be applied to each stage of hair transplantation. The third is the use of oxygen preserving solution. We mentioned earlier that you need to moisturize the harvested hair. The type of storage solution you can affect the engraftment rate. We can categorize them into extracellular solutions such as saline and ringer solution, plasmalate solution, etc. and intracellular solutions such as hypothermosol and HTK. We often use saline because it is cheap. But saline is actually not suitable for storing hair follicles because it is an extracellular solution that is high in sodium and low in potassium. If you observe a hair follicle in saline for a few hours, it will swell and turn cloudy. Instead, it is physiologically beneficial to use an intracellular solution, which is the solution used to preserve harvested organs and organ transplants such as liver transplant and kidney transplant to preserve hair follicles. In this case, the engraftment rate is often over 90% after 24 hours. There are still very few clinics in Korea that use organ preserving solution. Saline solution costs about $1.5 per liter, but organ storage solution is expensive at $250 per liter. Therefore, not many clinics use it. Okay, the last thing is minimizing tissue damage. Hair transplant involves taking hair follicles from an unaffected area and transplanting them into the balding area. If you have experienced transplanting plants, you will easily understand. It's important to bring enough soil around the roots so that the roots don't dry out and the plants can thrive in the new environment. The purpose of bringing enough soil like that is to conserve moisture, but it's also to keep the roots intact so that the plants can thrive. If you have questions, you can contact us through email or you can write messages through our YouTube channel. Thank you very much.